AG Domination, and today we have a different kind of video. I've been seeing a couple of these on YouTube, and I've even saw like some scenarios on Twitter, you know, dealing with this type of video and topic. But today we're going to be talking about 10 trades that should happen before the trade deadline in the NFL. So we all know the NFL trade deadline can either be super dead or somewhat interesting. It's never going to be like the biggest of events, but we have been hearing rumors about guys that could be dealt this season. Now, some of it I, kind of kept realistic. I didn't really include guys like Jalen Ramsey, Von Miller, or Chris Harris because we hear them coming up in trades, but like we don't really know if they're going to pull the trigger on the right deal, and some deals just kind of get rushed because of that. So I didn't really want to include players of their caliber in here. I think the biggest player we have in here, just to go ahead and spoil it, I think the biggest players that we have in here are probably going to be Melvin Gordon and Patrick Peterson. Other than that, I mean, everything is pretty much standard stuff. So, there's 10 trades in here. You're going to see me like hop in the franchise and all that cool stuff to break down the trades. So I'll see you there in just a moment. So, trade number one that we do have here on the screen is the New England Patriots finding a tight end for cheap. Now, in Madden, of course, this trade wouldn't work. As a matter of fact, I can prove it. Yeah, the trade just doesn't work. But in real life, I feel like this is a trade that would go down. We have the New England Patriots giving up a future 5th-round pick, so a 2021 5th-round pick, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Cameron Brate. I don't really know if they would be able to get O.J. Howard. I still think Tampa Bay is somewhat high on him, despite him not being used effectively this year. But Cameron Brate is a pretty underrated tight end. He's actually a pretty good blocker. Not the greatest athlete, but he figures out how to get open, and he's pretty good at catching the football. He's basically an upgraded version of what's his face in Minnesota, Kyle Rudolph. I always take a shit on Kyle Rudolph for not necessarily being the greatest athlete or creating separation or being that good of a blocker. So he's basically Kyle Rudolph, who this team apparently was interested in trading for, but a better version in my opinion. Cameron Brate is pretty underrated. Before O.J. Howard came around, he was like the second leading receiver for Tampa Bay at one time. So you just get a nice, tight end for cheap. He fits the Belichick system and like what Josh McDaniels wants to do on offense with Tom Brady. He can block. He can, create a little bit of separation. He can catch the ball. So, he'll definitely demand a few targets here and there. But overall, I just really like this trade, and this is one that I could definitely see going down at the trade deadline. So, this is the second trade that we have on the screen now. I totally just stole this from one of my favorite YouTubers that I like to watch at the Goat House. But Vic Beasley for a 2020 4th-round pick. I mean, Atlanta's got to clear up cap space somehow. I don't really care what Madden says. You can look at SpoTrack or whatever to keep track of Atlanta's cap space and all the other teams in the NFL. But Vic Beasley has a pretty big cap hit, and he's projected to get paid next year in some capacity, like his contract's up after this season. So Baltimore could probably trade for him, get a 4th-round pick and, just trade it for Vic Beasley. I mean, you could play him at the outside linebacker position where I think he's better anyway in a 3-4 scheme. And if you look at the Ravens, I mean, they're playing Pernell McPhee a lot, and Jalen Ferguson is starting to get his opportunity slowly. But outside of that, I mean, Matthew Judon's been like the only good pass rusher on this team. Tyus Bowser gets a few opportunities here and there, but this is really just a good way to add depth to Baltimore's pass rushing situation. Remember, they cut Shane Ray and they cut Tim Williams. They were both on the roster prior to the beginning of the season. Shane Ray gets cut. He still hasn't been signed. Tim Williams gets cut, and Green Bay picks him up on waivers. He's playing special teams right now. I imagine he gets to play more in the next coming weeks. But this is a good trade, in my opinion, for Atlanta. They just get to get off this contract, and they don't really have to worry about Vic Beasley anymore. I mean, he was a former sack leader at one point. You don't do that by accident, but you could argue that the value could be even lower as well. But I think the Ravens see the upside here, and they trade like a 4th-round pick. So when the YouTuber, the Goat House, was talking about this trade, it just all made sense to me, so I kind of just went with it. So shout out to the Goat House. I stole this trade, and the next trade that I do, you're going to think it's stolen, but it's actually been said a million times, so I'm just going to go with it. So I'll see you for the next one. And this is the next trade that I was referring to. Emmanuel Sanders getting traded to the Green Bay Packers for a 2020 third-round pick. It's been talked about a lot, not just by other YouTubers and Twitter, but like it's a rumor as well for Emmanuel Sanders. I don't really think Green Bay would actually like trade for him. The only reason is we talk about all these trades and Green Bay's always interested. They never pull the trigger on these trades anyway, and if they do, you know, it's like Deshaun Kaiser for fucking Demarius Randall. So, you know, Green Bay's done a good job in the front office in terms of like free agents and stuff, but when it comes to trades, they really haven't made anything happen unless it's on draft night. So I would be surprised myself if Emmanuel Sanders got traded to Green Bay for a third-round pick. But if you think about it, there's a couple of variables to keep in mind. Number one, Davante Adams still dealing with turf toe. We don't know how serious it is. He could miss the Monday Night Football game against the Detroit Lions, which would be huge for Detroit because the number one option for Aaron Rodgers won't be there. Number two, I mean, it really just depends on your thoughts on the rest of the wide receiver room. For me, I like the fact that Aaron Rodgers is spreading the ball around without Davante Adams, but if you don't have a solidified second wide receiver that's going to step up and take care of the load, then you need to get a guy like Emmanuel Sanders. And it's not a knock towards the receiver room, because in my opinion, you don't know what you have until you give them the opportunity. But the trade deadline isn't for like another 3 weeks. So they'll be getting an opportunity, and if they don't like what they see, then I think they should pull the trigger on Emmanuel Sanders. Because to be honest, I've said this before at least a couple of times, out of all the free agents that left Green Bay this offseason, the one that I would have liked to have kept would have been Randall Cobb, who is a slot receiver. He's a guy that can work in space. You can line him up on the outside sometimes, and Emmanuel Sanders just fits the build. He's an upgraded version of Randall Cobb for sure, still playing at a high level, and it would only be like a one-year rental situation. If you let him go, you get a compensatory pick. So either way, it's a win-win. You get some juice from Emmanuel Sanders, and when Davante comes back, Emmanuel Sanders is your slot guy, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is your deep threat, and Davante is your do-it-all number one receiver. So you add juice to your offense, and he fills in for Davante Adams in the meantime as your reliable veteran wide receiver. So to me, it's a win-win. The Broncos are talking about trading all these veteran players. The only one that I could realistically see getting traded is Emmanuel Sanders. There is going to be a lot of interest across the league, so it just doesn't surprise me. So Green Bay finds their new slot receiver in the form of Emmanuel Sanders. And here's another trade right here, very interesting one, and it's Leonard Williams exits the New York Jets. So the trade package that I have up here on the screen is the Jets trading Leonard Williams for Trey Hendrickson and a 6th-round pick in 2020 to the New Orleans Saints. Now, it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but to be honest, Leonard Williams hasn't been playing that well this year, and, you know, I don't know if the Jets are going to be all in and wanting to give this guy a contract. The Saints have been winning a lot of football games, but they could use some more depth on the defensive line, especially in the interior. Leonard Williams can play in the interior for third down packages. You can play him on the outside, similar to Cam Jordan. You can kind of use him around. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife on your defensive line. You also have Marcus Davenport, who's been balling. And, of course, you know, on the inside, Sheldon Rankins is going to come back at some point. If he isn't already back, my bad if I don't know that information. It's early in the morning for me. And they also have David Onyemata. So, like, this is just a good way to add more depth on the defensive line. You don't have to pay him next year. Yes, it's a little bit of a stiff cap hit, but you don't have to pay him next year. This could be like a one-year rental situation. And Trey Hendrickson, you know, he's young. He's got some upside. He's versatile. You could play him on the defensive line if you want. You could also use him as a bigger, you know, outside linebacker and run defense, or as a, you know, edge rusher. You can use him however you want to for the Jets. He's just a nice piece. He's still young. He has a little bit of upside. He actually has played decent for the New Orleans Saints. But he's starting to fall out of the rotation the more that Marcus Davenport has improved and gotten pressure. So this is just a win-win for both sides. Trey Hendrickson gets to go to a team that could actually use him, and Leonard Williams gets to go to a competitive team that could use a little bit of a spark and another body in their rotation on the inside of the defensive line. And right here for the LA Chargers, we have a pretty interesting trade right here. So a 2020 5th-round pick will be traded from the Los Angeles Chargers to the Washington Redskins for Josh Norman. I feel like the Redskins know that they're just going to have to break this thing apart, and they will try to get off these bigger contracts like Josh Norman. The Chargers, they could use a boundary corner because they've had a couple of injuries on that side of the ball, and they just released cornerback Trevor Williams from his injury settlement. So it's basically Desmond King, who is a slot corner, and Casey Hayward, who plays on the boundary. So they could use a third guy. They're probably going to look for a veteran player, you know, but I wouldn't surprise me if they go for a young player. But to me, Washington's probably going to get rid of Josh Norman. This is just a gut feeling, and I feel like the Chargers would be a pretty good destination for his play style, and just for the fact that it's going to be a bargain. It's not really going to cost you a whole lot because Washington is just going to try to get rid of him. I feel like the Chargers, who need a corner, will just give up a 5th-round pick. You could argue he's probably worth a 6th-round pick at this point, but since the Chargers want him, I think they'll just give up a 5th-round pick. And here we are with the Los Angeles Chargers again, and this is an interesting trade right here. Melvin Gordon finally gets traded to the Buffalo Bills for a 3rd-round pick. Now, this is another one that I've been seeing on Twitter and on YouTube a little bit, but I added a twist. So after Melvin Gordon gets traded for a 3rd-round pick, the Chargers are going to turn around and sign Jay Ajayi for the rest of the season. Now, you're probably wondering, why are you being so extra, you know, like with that? For me, like, Jay Ajayi is a running back that can just produce, and you're not going to have to re-sign him for 4 years or anything. Just going to be like a low-risk, high-reward type of thing. Jay Ajayi's been dealing with all the knee injuries. You bring him in for the rest of the season, he could be like a pitch relief type of guy. So it'll be like Austin Eckler's offense, and then, you know, you have a guy like Justin Jackson who's also getting carries. And I feel like Jay Ajayi can only come in when he needs to. Trading Melvin Gordon to the Bills, I mean, they have Frank Gore, but you don't really want to run the shit out of Frank Gore, to be honest. He's good. He's had a great career. The fact that he's running the ball the way he is at 36 is just very impressive. It's more impressive than Tom Brady playing quarterback right now. I'm going to be honest. You know, quarterback's the hardest position to play, but Brady's never really had to rely on athleticism. He has the brain, and the arm isn't going anywhere, really, to be honest. Especially considering he doesn't really have to take deep shots here and there. He does here and there, but not really. Whereas Frank Gore, he's a running back, 36 years old, still taking a beating. They have TJ Yeldon, but he's not really the guy that you want to run between the tackles. Like, he has the capability, but they use him more as a receiving back. Devin Singletary been battling a hamstring injury. He's kind of, a good pitch relieving running back right here. But I feel like Melvin Gordon just kind of fits. He gives Buffalo a new element, and it's a star player that you have to account for. He'll be a nice check down for a guy like Josh Allen. And, the Chargers will get a compensatory pick in 2020, 2021. It'll probably be a 3rd-round pick, so, that's also huge as well. The Chargers are getting more than just this 3rd-round pick. They'll be getting another 3rd-round pick from the compensatory picks. And Melvin Gordon just adds juice to the backfield. So we're going to go ahead and get to the next trade right now. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have another trade right here involving the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons fans, I'm sorry that I keep using y'all in these trades. This is the only other time you'll be involved in a trade. But we have the Falcons trading Mohamed Sanu to the Oakland Raiders for a 2020 4th-round pick. I didn't want to undersell the impact of Mohamed Sanu, so I figured a 4th-round pick would be reasonable. I almost did a 5th-round pick, but I feel like that'd just be underselling it a little bit. Sanu, he has a pretty, decent-sized cap hit for the Falcons, and this is just another scenario of them getting off another contract. It's not that Sanu's contract is bad. He's a pretty good player, despite, what the contract may tell you. And Oakland, I mean, right now they have a bunch of dudes in their wide receiving core. Some can play, some, you could improve upon, but, you add Mohamed Sanu to Tyrell Williams and, your Hard Knocks legend Keelan Doss and, guys like that, Hunter Renfrow. Yeah, I mean, you add Sanu, you have another receiving option. And we see John Gruden likes to open things up a little bit. They've been doing reverse wide receiver runs or whatever for Trevor Davis. Maybe you have Mohamed Sanu throw a deep ball in your offense. I just feel like this would be a very intriguing trade for both sides. The Falcons collected more draft capital. This would be like their third, fourth round pick that they've gotten, because in the other trade I had Vic Beasley going to the Baltimore Ravens for a fourth round pick. So this would just be interesting. And to be honest, I fucks with this trade. I really like it for the Falcons and the Raiders, especially if Oakland can at least be 500 around the trade deadline. This could give them a little bit of extra juice. And they'll probably be competing for a wild card spot around that time if they continue to do what they've been doing. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so we have a big splash right here for the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to be trading a current second-round pick, which is in 2020. So a 2020 second-round pick and a 2021 fifth-round pick to the Cincinnati Bengals for Geno Atkins. I mean, right now, if you look at Philadelphia, in real life, Malik Jackson is going to be out for the year. And Timmy Jernigan, no real word on when he's supposed to come back. Could be in a few weeks. But if you look at the rest of the defensive line, Fletcher Cox has been a beast. But imagine putting Geno Atkins next to him, and you could have Jernigan just rotate in whenever he comes back. And then on the defensive end spots, you have Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett. This defensive line could be deadly. It already is pretty damn stacked on the D-line, but, look, let's just take a look at the depth chart real quick. So, at left end, they have Derek Barnett. Vinny Curry's not too bad either. Sharif Miller, more of a project player, just the guy that they're trying to groom right now. Malik Jackson in real life is hurt. Jernigan, I'm pretty sure, is hurt. Akeem Spence and Hassan Ridgeway, just two big guys that are going to fill up the hole. Outside of Brandon Graham, I mean, you have Josh Sweat, who's okay. But imagine putting Geno Atkins over here. Jernigan, like I said, can rotate in and out. Spence and Ridgeway, they could play the goal line. So, if you have a chance to get better, if you want to strengthen your strength, this is a good way to do it. Cincinnati, they already came out. They're like, we're not trading A.J. Green. And you know what? That's okay. I'll believe it when I don't see it. But, Geno Atkins could be a realistic move. I mean, he's been playing solid, but, it's been really under the radar since the Bengals are 0-5. No one's going to talk about players that are doing good on shitty teams. Nobody does that. So, Geno Atkins could come to Philadelphia, give him some juice. I don't know his contract situation. He may have a year or two left, but regardless, you're going to get the most out of him. And to be honest, I don't know what more they can get than a second and a future fifth-round pick. So, I feel like this is just a move that the Eagles should make. Why not? You're already going to be really good. Why not continue to add to your strength? Go for it. For the Seattle Seahawks, this is a trade that I had in mind. Honestly, you can sub out Dre Kirkpatrick and put in Darqueze Dennard. Either way, this is the trade that I see. A future fifth-round pick from Seattle in 2021 for Dre Kirkpatrick and a future sixth-round pick in 2021 from the Cincinnati Bengals. I feel like Seattle's going to try to go all in for like a Chris Harris Jr. or hell, even a Jalen Ramsey trade. But I feel like they're just going to keep coming up short. Like, we hear their names all the time in these trade rumors. I just feel like they're going to end up giving up, and they'll probably see, some bad teams that may have some defensive backs for sale. I think Cincinnati will try to get off Dre Kirkpatrick. And, Seattle's like, well, we see that big cap hit that you have. We don't want to, not get anything else to take on the cap hit. So we'll, give you a higher pick if you give us a pick. And I feel like this should be the trade that goes down in my mind. But don't worry, guys. We have, I think, a couple more trades. Maybe we have one more trade scenario, actually. And this is a big one, so I saved it towards the end. It's kind of like the Geno Atkins trade, but with a player that, will be coming back shortly. So we'll see you around for the final trade. Alright, here we go for the final trade of the video right here. We have a big one. I saved one of the bigger ones for last, so I covered some of the bigger ones, and then I kind of got through some of these smaller trades. I saved the biggest one for last, in my opinion, because if the Chiefs make this move, it just makes them that much better, in my opinion. Patrick Peterson, remember, he has been suspended for 6 weeks. This is the final week he'll be suspended against the Atlanta Falcons. And then he'll come back. I don't know if Arizona's going to plan on playing him, but Patrick Peterson, he's been rumored in trades for like 3 seasons now, and I think Kansas City will probably not be able to get a Jalen Ramsey deal done, and Chris Harris is not going to get traded in the same division with Kansas City. So I feel like this is a last-ditch resort for Kansas City to make a splashy move to get a better veteran corner, and it's going to be Patrick Peterson from the Arizona Cardinals for a 2020 second-round pick and a 2020 fifth-round pick. The only reason I didn't do a first-round pick is because Patrick Peterson hasn't played at all this year, and I feel like his value will go down just a little bit, and plus he's a little bit older now. But if you look at the Kansas City Chiefs cornerback depth chart, outside of Kendall Fuller, who is their nickel corner, they have some decent players. I mean, Mo Claiborne, he's okay. Rashad Breeland has been hit or miss this season, and Travarius Ward has been kind of okay, but when you have a chance to improve drastically, you go out and you improve drastically. Patrick Peterson immediately becomes your boundary corner. You could play Breeland at cornerback number 2, or Maurice Claiborne or Morris Claiborne, whatever. And then like Kendall Fuller can still remain your slot corner. But to me, this is a splashy move that Kansas City needs to make. And also, you'll be reuniting Patrick Peterson with former NFL teammate Tyrann Mathieu. So that's also another thing that went into effect. Not really. I just kind of did it on the fly, but you know, this would be pretty dope right here. I think this is a trade that they should consider making. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed all the little trade scenarios. Some of these, like I said, I totally ripped off from like Twitter or YouTube, but a lot of these I came up with on my own. You know, this is just me trying to think outside the box a little bit, like with the Mohamed Sanu trade and Darqueze Dennard and Geno Atkins to Philly. Like, some of those trades I tried to think outside the box a little bit. Some of them I completely ripped off. Some of them I've been hearing for a little bit. So I tried to be a little bit different, but I could see a lot of this shit happening. So maybe it doesn't. Like I said, this trade deadline is either going to be completely dead or it's going to be somewhat interesting. I didn't put Jalen Ramsey in this video. I didn't put Von Miller. I didn't put Chris Harris. I'm just a little unsure. I'm not quite buying that just yet. I didn't put AJ Green because I'm going to take Zach Taylor at his word. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But guys like Emmanuel Sanders, Patrick Peterson, Geno Atkins, I did put them in this video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. And let me know some trade scenarios you have down below in the comment section. Or you could always DM me some trade scenarios. But keep them somewhat realistic, please. Peace out, though.